back to you, Brownie. No. Mike Brown was an unbelievable captain. We were, in 1979, to put it kindly, a ragtag bunch. We had injuries up and down, and to keep the morale of that team together was something Herculean. He was a captain's captain. He was outstanding, and I'm really looking forward to hearing him talk about that season. Mike Brown.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's a real pleasure to be here today. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about the Harvard season and then a few minutes talking about the Harvard-Yale game. We'll probably talk for about 10 minutes or so, as I know we're trying to get to the JV game. The Harvard-Yale game in 1979 was a game where a 2-6 Harvard team matched up against an 8-0 Yale team. It was a game where a Harvard team, as Dan Mead just mentioned, that was really duct taped together with injuries and all sorts of problems, lined up against a defense, an offensive team that lined up against a defense that was ranked first in the country against the run. Yale's defense had only allowed something like 530 yards against all season. It was also a Harvard-Yale game where 72,000 fans showed up to root on the teams. It was the largest crowd in the Yale Bowl since 1954. And it was also a game that the New Haven Register called last summer the biggest upset in the history, the 100-year history of the Yale Bowl. What the game wasn't was a game where the Harvard team went down to play the undefeated Yale team with the idea of playing spoiler, to ruin their undefeated season. We also didn't go down to Yale to blemish their Ivy League championship. We really had so much more respect for Carm Koza, Ken Hill, Tim Payne, Zinger, Sully, and the rest of the Yale guys. We went down for something much more important than that. We went down for redemption and vindication, and to prove to ourselves that we were really a good team that had run into some bad problems. We went down to Yale to create a legacy so that we could live with our season for the rest of our lives. On a lighter note, 1979 was an awesome year to be in college. The economy was on its ass. Jimmy Carter was president. Mortgage rates were 13%. Christy Brinkley was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And the drinking age in the state of Massachusetts was 18 years old. It wasn't, however, a very good time to be a part of the Harvard football program. We hadn't had a winning season since 1976. We had just lost our starting quarterback, Larry Brown, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and expectations were pretty low. The hope was that we'd have an exciting season because we had a 6'4" quarterback named Brian Buckley, who had a rifle arm, and everyone was looking forward to having line up in the shotgun and throw 70-yard bombs all season to Richie Horner, our all-Ivy wide receiver. But as things work out, Brian had to take a year off for academic reasons. But that was okay, because we had Ronnie Kucha. Ronnie Kucha was an athlete from the West Coast, probably one of the most highly recruited high school players in the country, and at the time, the most heralded recruit that Harvard had ever had. Ronnie's high school team as quarterback had gone 36-0. They played one team during his senior season. They were winning 60-0 at the half, and the team didn't even come out for after the half to play in the second half. Ronnie had something like 5 high school national records to his credit. But again, Ronnie also had to take a year off for academic reasons. Well, that was okay with us. In fact, it was even better than okay, because that meant that Judson Burke St. John, Berkey, was going to be our starting quarterback. Berkey was wicked smart. He knew the multiplex offense better than anybody. Berkey had a really good arm. He could run. He had a presence like Joe Montana in the huddle. And he had led our freshman team to an 8-1 record, losing only to Yale in the last game of the season. The season starts. We play Columbia. We beat Columbia. Everybody beat Columbia. I think even Columbia beat Columbia. Second game, UMass, big, tough, strong team. Berkey goes down during the game with a bad knee. In comes Mike Buchanan, a sophomore quarterback from Alabama. We lose to UMass 10-7. Second game, BU. Buchanan throws an interception, makes the tackle, keep the guy out of the end zone. We get in the huddle, the defense turned the ball over right away, and Mike Buchanan starts to call a play in his southern drawl, power I ride, and then he stops and spit out the biggest mouthful of blood I've ever seen. Everyone was horrified. Off the field, Mike went to get his jaw shut, broken jaw. And then in came Mike Sprzinski. And Mike's sitting back in the back of the room. Everyone knows that Mike's an excitable guy. And as urban legend has it, he was so excited to enter the game that Durkee and Tom Beatrice had to call the first next 2 plays. We lost that game. On to Cornell. Smuz goes down with a bad ankle. Joe Lottie comes in. We lose to Cornell. Burke St. John's comes back against, I think it was Dartmouth, still hobbled. We lose to Dartmouth 10-7. We lose to Princeton 9-7. We lose to Brown in the mud. And now we're faced with the last 2 games of the season, 1 win, 6 losses. We were really psyched to play Penn because they were winless, and we thought we could definitely win this game. We had a great week of practice. Everyone was excited, lots of noise. We wake up Friday morning, and it was like a punch in the gut. The Boston Globe had a full-page article in their Sports Plus section. It was a black page with an empty Harvard football helmet, and it said something like, "Trouble out at the stadium." It was basically an article that went something like, "What's wrong with Harvard football?" And the headline basically read, the Harvard football team was looking down the barrel at having the worst record in the school's history in 105 years. And then it went on to talk about the fact that recruiting was too tight and academic standards were too high. Durkee, I'm not sure if we would go along with that. But the team did not, fall back. We got psyched, and we took it out on Penn. We beat Penn something like 41-27, and after the game, the locker room was full of cheers. Beat Yale, beat Yale, beat Yale. We were ready. We spent an awesome week of practice. It was all business. Everyone was focused, and off we went down to the Yale Bowl for practice. I remember that night at the Yale Bowl. It was cold. The stadium was huge. The wind was blowing, and it was eerily quiet. The team was just totally focused. And I also remember that feeling that all seniors have, that bittersweet feeling that I knew we had the biggest game of our season ahead of us. But like all the seniors, I also knew that that day would be the last day that we put on the pads. That night, we went back to the internationally chic and famous Yale Motor Inn, and Joe Reston put on a speech, an X and O's demonstration that I think blew the whole team away. He drew up play after play and showed how no matter what Yale did, that we could shift and beat them. And during his whole X's and O's speech, he kept on saying, "It's up to you guys, it's up to you." And then Joe Restick's demeanor changed. He became somewhat solemn. And he then went on and told us about his experience as a teenager during World War II in the OSS. The OSS later became the CIA. Joe Restick was one of 10 kids. His father was a coal miner at Czechoslovakian descent, and somehow Coach Restick was recruited to be dropped behind enemy lines, going back to his native village in Czechoslovakia, and then pulled out to gather intelligence. And Coach Restick told us that on a couple occasions, he was with grown men in life and death circumstances. And he told us how, in those circumstances, some men were stoic and brave. Some men prayed, and other men cried for their mothers. And he ended up tying that in to what stood before us the next day. And basically it said, "It's up to you guys to decide how you're going to face this challenge." And he finished off by saying a couple times, "It's up to you, it's up to you." We go to the Yale Bowl the next day. The pageantry was unbelievable. Mink coats, Bloody Marys. We show up, the Yale fans were a little bit cocky, and that really pissed us off. We entered the stadium, and we walked down the tunnel, and the Yale band was lined up in the tunnel. I was maybe 100 feet in front of the team, and they were playing the song Mickey Mouse. And I thought to myself, that's not a very good idea. As I got to the center of the field to take the coin toss with Tim Tumpane, the music stopped. And I turned around and I saw that there was a melee going on in the tunnel. Evidently, Orazio Latanzi decided to put an end to the song and popped a trombone player. I said, "We're ready to play." You know, the game's in the history books. We won the toss. We ran 78 yards, 17 plays. Jim Callahan was unbelievable. Burke St. John was unbelievable. I'll also have to say, too, our defense all season long was unbelievable. They held 4 teams during the season to less than 10 points. And Yale turned over the ball 6 times, had a bunch of penalties, and just put themselves on their heels, and they couldn't come back. We won 22-7. I remember our team was ecstatic. The goalpost came down. Mike Durgan, a couple of months ago, said to me, he was so happy he didn't come down until Christmas. It meant that much to us. The punchline to the season, I think, is that Burke St. John ended up leading the Ivy League in passing with over 1,000 yards. Was voted to be the All-Ivy quarterback. Richie Horner led the league in passing touchdowns, and he was also All-Ivy. And I guess one other thing I'll mention in closing, because I have a few of my St. John's Prep classmates here, is that one of the very special things that I had really enjoyed as captain is I had 5 guys from St. John's Prep up in Danvers on my football team. Smuzz, Durgy, Matt and Jay Foley, and me. I even had the pleasure of playing with Matt and Jay in youth football, so I played for the Lions in Danvers in high school and also in college. And those guys will remember a famous story of Coach Fred Glatz, our high school coach, Bobby Glatz's dad. I'm not sure where Bobby is right there. During a halftime speech when the team was lagging and he wanted to get us going and create some urgency, he screamed at us, "Hell, blink your eye once and the half's over. Blink your eye again and the whole damn season's over." And as I was preparing for the speech today, I thought to myself, you blink your eye just a few more times and 35 years passes like that. And I have to say that there's probably not a day that goes by when members of the 1979 Harvard football team don't draw on the experience that we had that season. experiences of teamwork, hard work, perseverance, and to know that no matter what, good things will happen if you never, ever, ever give up. Thank you.
Fantastic, Mike. Thank you very, very much. Again, thank you all for attending. It has been a terrific start to the weekend. The JV game did kick off at 1 o'clock. It is being played in the stadium. Invite all of you to come out and watch. Enjoy your time inside if you prefer to be warm. But otherwise, we'll see you in the stadium. Great game tomorrow. Thanks.